One of the questions that's not getting asked enough is how all these innovations in AI impact clients. I spend most of my days now talking to technologists and designers, builders about these AI innovations, and they're excited, and they should be. But lawyers are dealing with clients every day. That's who they're seeing. And clients are people with problems. They're pragmatists. They don't care about the hype. And so thinking about how these tools impact them was really important to me. That's why I wanted to have a conversation with a lawyer who I know cares about how these things impact clients. That's my friend Beau Atkins. As you'll hear in our conversation, Beau and I met years ago. He had read Lawyer Forward, my book that talks about how these innovations in law practice can impact both the lawyers and the clients, and he's applying those kinds of ideas to AI. The conversation's really interesting. I want to keep having that on this AI in Practice show, brought to you by our friends at Spellbook. If you're interested in these conversations, please subscribe. And now, my conversation with Beau Atkins. Beau, how are you today, sir?
Amazing. How are you?
I'm okay, man. I think it's funny that we just spent 40 minutes trying to turn our technology on. One of the things that I have often said is you can tell it's a legal tech conference or party because the tech breaks and nobody really understands the law. So here we are. We're going to talk about AI in practice in your firm. And I want to ask, just a spoiler alert, I want to ask the big question of how AI is changing the products and services that you are offering to clients. But before we get to that, I want to ask you about your context. You have a company called Evolve Family Law. You and I have talked about this practice and all the games. You've been playing with it for over a decade now. Tell me about Evolve Family Law and your practice context.
Yeah, well, so Evolve Family Law formed in 2020. I had previously been at another law office here in Canada. Went to my first 𝗀𝗂𝗯𝗀𝗶. That's the first time I met you. You were handing out your books, Lawyer Forward. Grabbed a copy, and I was just bright-eyed, bushy-tailed in this conference. I'd never been to any sort of legal tech conference. I was extremely frustrated with my practice. I've always been fairly entrepreneurial, but those entrepreneurial skills and assets really weren't converting inside of the traditional law office. And that's when I sort of had I was sort of at a point in my life where I'm ready to give up on law altogether. I'm ready to quit the practice, start a business. I had entrepreneurial friends. They were happier. They seemed happier than I was. They seemed to have more time than I did. They seemed to make more money than I did. And I really wasn't getting rewarded, I felt, from my career. And I had an epiphany in San Diego in 2019 at that 𝗀𝗂𝗯𝗀𝗃 that I would just blow it up, which, I mean, it was sort of divorcing my previous partnership with the other lawyers there, and start from the ground up and build a business, a law business, not a law firm. And so I very rarely will you ever hear me or my company talk about our office as a law firm, because I wanted to get as far away from that concept, which I think is, my opinion is it's broken. I know you and I have talked at lengths on that, and apply best business practices to a law business. And in the 5 years since we started, we've definitely had bumps and bruises, tech malfunctions like we've experienced today. We've generally improved along the way, and it's been incremental. It's looked slow, but I'd like to say we will eventually be an overnight success, 5, 10, 15 years in the making. And that's sort of, it's just that continual growth that we've enjoyed.
Well, and I think consistent with that, you have perpetually played in a way that, I would certainly define as entrepreneurial. But there's this sort of cliche with small businesses that they're the incubators of innovation. They're the places where people will go play, and if it goes sideways, it's okay. It doesn't drive the economy into the tank if some tiny company didn't work out. But they're a place that the upsides are really big if they go figure stuff out. I think a lot of that, especially in law firms, under calculates the risk involved in an entrepreneurial firm, it undercalculates the difficulty of the overwhelm in a lot of these businesses, and the idea that they're just going to go try new things. And so you've got this weird paradox where these solo firms and these small firms are willing to go try new things, but they just can't be wrong. I mean, they can be wrong, but they can't be existentially wrong. And I think that really brings us to this question about AI. And what I want to get from you is, what are you doing that you're like, I'm willing to try this thing, but this needs to have a real shot of working. So let's start with product development. You and I have talked for years about, how you craft services and how you package them and how you price them. And I think you've got a really good mind about that. Tell me about AI specifically in terms of what you're trying in your firm. Are you just trying to build efficiencies and do what you had done before, but do it a little faster? Or are you able to offer new things to clients that you weren't able to offer before?
Well, we're definitely offering new things, and we are playing around. It's a sandbox at my office, and everyone on my team knows, of course, there's parameters we have to use. As a law firm, client data is sanctimonious. We have to treat that very with a high degree of sensitivity and make sure it's all siloed within our organization. So to that extent, we're not using AI as much with our client data as frankly I'd like to get to once we're more assured about the sense that where that data is going to live, how it's going to be used, and so forth. So we've really maintained ownership of our internal client data, where some of the products that I've been playing with, and I'm cautious about talking too much about it because I know there's going to be, I'll get some blowback from this. Where I've developed what I call an AI assist product, where I've developed certain prompts and things for clients to use, saying, hey, maybe if you feed in your information into this thing, it will help you through your court application or your trial or your case management. And I've essentially plugged in on our own custom GPT things that I can upload. I can upload publicly available cases, case law. I can upload court rules. I can upload court forms into this thing. And then I can arm clients with that and essentially provide them with a disclaimer. Hey, you can upload all of your stuff. I'm not saying you should, because I don't know where that data goes. And but you could do it. And then I've helped this GPT understand procedure and process in our courts so that clients can easily follow the direction that's involved. Now, we cater to typically lower net worth, lower income customers. I've intentionally done that because I feel, one, that's the most underserved market. Two, it's the most scalable market. And three, it's the least risky market, because we're not talking millions of dollars. We're talking people who typically go to H&R Block or file their taxes with TurboTax or something like that. And they're already using certain tools to help themselves because, frankly, the profession is out of reach for them. That first ClioCon I mentioned, they always produce this Clio Trends report. And one of the pieces of data that I clung on to was that 79% of people who had a legal problem were not going to lawyers. That's a serious problem in my mind. And I was seeing it perpetuated in our courts, where you'd have a growing number of self-represented parties. They're doing a horrible job. Their kids are suffering. They're suffering. And it's just being prolonged. And as an entrepreneur, that's where I've really been able to build and grow, is understand where my why comes from, where my purpose is. And my purpose is to improve family law, to make things better for kids. I personally was a child of a divorce, and through my entrepreneurial networks and putting everything together, we do certain exercises in groups. And that's where I identified, this is why I'm so passionate about it, is because I experienced it and it was horrible. So how can I make that better for people?
I want to frame your the product that you're developing, this idea of this sort of self-help tool, a little bit differently than I think most of the people watching this will think of it. And I'll give you an analogy from the technology, from the marketing tech industry. So in MarTech, there's this company that does, I think it was CoSchedule. They do like social media scheduling, is their actual product. But I ran into this. I did a search for improving subject lines in emails, right? Like if you're doing email marketing, I wanted to be able to improve the subject lines. And so I land on this tool that they have, which is this free tool that tested headlines based on a rubric that they had put together. This was pre-LLM. This was like 5 years ago. But basically, they would go and put a score. You'd go put in your proposed headline. It would say, okay, you need more emotional words in there, or maybe frame this as a question or whatever. But the point is, the tool itself was totally free. It was out front. It would get rid of a lot of people who just wanted something for free, but it also got their email address. I'd have to go in, and if I want to be able to test my headline, I had to give them my email address, and then they'd come back and they'd ask me questions about what I need in my company. My point is, this freemium model, the idea that you give this sort of low lift, tech heavy, person light version of a product, and you just give it out for free, is not uncommon. But we don't really do it in law. So tell me about that kind of, what your fears are with that. Are you worried about regulation with that you might run afoul of what your jurisdiction cares about in terms of client interaction? What is it about building that either made you hesitate or you think will make other lawyers hesitate?
Yeah, I don't know that I'm too afraid of the regulation. I've got a good relationship with our law society, and I've tried to maintain that as much as I can. I give them a heads up of things I'm trying, and run things by them, and try and communicate as best as I can. I am afraid of, I shouldn't say I'm afraid. I know it's a risk. Right now, again, I'm catering to that 79% who aren't really accessing legal services anyways, trying to make that process better. It makes it better for us. It makes it better for the court. It makes it better for another lawyer on the other side who otherwise might just have some ignorant self-represented litigant causing all this trouble. So I'm not that concerned yet, but it's only a matter of time, because we're scaling, that we start to creep up, and now we're starting to eat lunch, other lawyers' lunch. And I think we have a very protectionist profession where once that starts to happen, there will be complainers. And I'm not as worried about not being able to hold up to the scrutiny, but I'm more worried about the delays and the financial. I mean, the reality is, you get enough complaints, you get injunctions, now all of a sudden that's a business. From a business angle, you can't practice. And so I am treading relatively lightly on that side of things. I can tell you, we've put this AI Assist product into practice. We have had a client use it in a trial situation against a senior lawyer. Our client reported very positive things, including basically that she got everything she wanted following the trial and the decision. She entered that trial with confidence. She's indicated she would provide testimonials and things like that to us. I'm afraid of doing anything like that because, of course, in doing so, it exposes who the other lawyer was on the other side of this file, and it really opens it all up to scrutiny, which internally I'm not afraid of, because I spent an inordinate amount of time. My lawyer brain spent a lot of time on these disclaimers, saying, "Hey, none of this is legal advice. By the way, we don't know where your data is going. Also, this thing tends to just sometimes make shit up. And all of a sudden, you've got a judge who didn't exist and a case who didn't exist." My explanation with clients is, if I present that to a court, I will get more than a hand slap, as I ought to. I'm sort of the gatekeeper to this. I need to make sure the cases I'm presenting to a court as an officer of the court are legitimate cases. From a self-represented perspective, maybe there's a slap on the wrist, but I think I've seen one instance in Georgia. I don't know. Did you see that where a judge relied, a
Yeah.
lower court judge
But
relied on the self-rep's hallucinated case? It was
right.
overturned at the Court of Appeal. But
Yeah.
I don't think anything negative really happened to that self-rep, as far as I could tell, my assessment of it. So it's certainly a concern, and you want to tell clients to be aware of this. But quite frankly, I'm seeing a growing number of clients who come to me saying, "Hey, I already ran all this through ChatGPT," and they're doing it from an inexperienced angle. I've turned almost all of my efforts from studying the law to studying AI and how it can be effectively used as a tool to help people through their family law journeys.
Yeah, you really have in the practice of law, you have what you know, you have sort of these human services that you do, and then you have the way you think. And we're these AI tools are pretty good at the what do you know category, though to your point, sometimes it'll just make stuff up. But in terms of if access to information is the issue at hand, honestly, I read Ben Weinberger's book, Too Big to Know, like a decade ago. We've been into the ownership of a chunk of knowledge being a problematic basis for expertise for a long time, right? It's if it's more about the way you think, if it's more about the way you serve, then we can lean on that maybe. But that what you know category, again, fraught because these tools don't perfectly reflect what is known. But honestly, neither do the lawyers. And so we have to figure out, all right, where do we fit in this system? So you've got this product that you mentioned, this kind of self-help, we'll call it a freemium product. Are you using AI in any of your other services? So, for example, if you have a flat fee divorce mediation or something, are you using AI, for example, to help people communicate with their own files or to communicate with the firm? Is AI being embedded in any of your other product offerings or service offerings?
Yeah, so you've known me for a number of years. I am a Kool-Aid drinker. And at the end of the day, anytime I'm assessing a technology, I'm looking at its scalability, I'm looking at its usefulness, I'm looking at uh, how my team interacts with it, how clients interact with it. We are also experimenting. I provided you a phone number. I'm not sure if you had a chance to test it, but I'm developing this AI agent, which is very clearly an AI agent and will always be marketed. And any communication I tell with clients is you're talking with an AI agent. This is not a real person. Now, with its developers out of Toronto that I'm working with, we have given it a compassionate and empathetic voice, explained the types of situations it'll be dealing with, and instructed it only to gather information, never to give legal advice. Essentially, someone seeking legal advice says, Beau or Melissa or Vince and their team will have to discuss that with you directly. I'm just here to gather information. Now, once from that phone call, we then get a transcript. From that transcript, we then can provide a summary. From that summary, now we can interact with that a little bit. And my goal with this is to create a number of different tiered agents. The first one will just collect conflict searches. One of the things I've researched and identified is that when people call looking for a lawyer, especially when they're in the chaos of going through a family law situation, they want to be heard. And they don't want to be heard on the other end of a voicemail or an email. They want to talk with my theory is something. It doesn't necessarily have to be someone. They want to be heard. And so right now we use a virtual assistant, live voice assistant for any new clients or emergencies. So that goes right to a person because I know how important that is to our customers. The goal is to eventually replace that with an AI agent, hopefully going to increase our capacity so we can scale more, so we can help more people, and we can do so at a lower cost, with the goal passing that cost down to the end user. So my goal is that with 3 lawyers, I can serve what previously it would have taken 300 lawyers to serve. And it's always trying to improve on that accessibility piece.
Hmm. Well, I want to think about it from the client side. I remember back in the days at Clubhouse, if you remember those halcyon days. I remember being in a room in one of these Clubhouse rooms, and they were talking about the future of courts. And the idea was, again, this is pre-LLM, but that these courts would all move online. It'd be, online dispute resolution through an algorithm, yada, yada. And I remember asking this room of technologists and some lawyers, well, how are you going to give people their day in court? So if some, mom in the Midwest who lives downstream from some chemical company, she wants that experience of being able to go into the halls of the courtroom and have somebody tell her, you know what, you're right. Your claim here is right. And it was fascinating because they said, well, actually, the mom doesn't want that. The court's really intimidating and its power, and she just wants to be able to just get her money or whatever. And I was like, you guys have clearly never served clients before, because clients desperately want some validation. They want some power restructure. They want some shame imposed on. And it brings me to a question about clients. Are clients changing their expectations of you in the age of AI? Is the AI making them think, okay, I need to get answers faster, but I'm willing to wait more for personal service? How is that experience, do you think, impacting client expectations?
I agree with you. We get a lot of clients who want their day in court and want validation. You practice some family law. Did you ever see that actually happen? Very rarely. I mean,
Yeah.
you can spend hundreds of thousands of dollars and never get that. You'll get a judge who, at the end of the day, is trying to reach an objective decision. Best, they paint both parties pretty badly and make the decision they think is best for the kids. There's no validation. I'm reminded of Henry Ford's quote: "If he asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses." And I think maybe that's a poor job lawyers have done and media has done in painting a resolution that, in my experience, 15 years of doing almost exclusively family law, I've seen only the most exceptional cases where that validation has ever come. And at what cost? It's never been quick. And it kind of it makes me emotional thinking about what the kids experience and how they're doing now.
So that the parents can get their ability to shame the other person. Yeah. And I mean, in general, I had a rule that if somebody said, hey, it's not about the money, it's about the principle of the thing, we would charge those people double, right? Because we knew those were going to be the toughest clients, because it's hard to get those emotional goods from a court system that's trying to separate itself from those emotional goods. But again, does that I mean, you see a lot of studies about how people are making these relationships with these AI tools. They're getting these emotional validation things, these goods from these tools in a way that freaks me out, right? Like, it scares me a lot that people are trying to get these kinds of feels from these tools that really don't care, right? And part of it is, it's cool that they don't, like, I can go talk to ChatGPT. I've done the bad thing of anthropomorphizing him, and I refer to him as Uncle Chat, but I can go talk to Uncle Chat for as long as I dang well please. He's not going to say to me, like my wife says, hey man, this is boring. Okay. What you're talking to me about is dull, and I don't want to talk about this anymore. Uncle Chat is like, that was brilliant. What you just said. And I'm like, thank you, Uncle Chat. You are so right. It was brilliant. Our clients, are you seeing from them, are they able to get emotional validation? Are they mostly using, these kinds of tools for information access? Is that giving them a sense of relief? Has it changed your product design, what you think clients are after now? I'm just curious if it's changed at all. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it definitely has. And I think people need, I agree with you. Some of the directions and uses that people are using these tools for is scary. And I think without putting all of the effort into figuring out how to prompt and knowing enough that you can get useful information back, knowing what its limitations are, I think that's a really dangerous thing. I just watched a podcast with Simon Sinek, and I know he's sort of mainstream, but one of the things he talked about was yeah, when you're arguing with a spouse or a girlfriend, you can plug in, hey, this is going on. What should I say? Blah, blah, blah. And then you can go say that to your spouse or girlfriend, whoever you're fighting with, and make things right again. But what he says is if she knew that you used ChatGPT, it would probably blow up all your efforts. And not only that, you would lack the tools to address it the next time. And you would slowly just turn into this place where your entire existence is being driven by this. I'll go back to the automotive example where people use cars in negligent and dangerous ways too. But I still think I try to look at the tools that we have from an optimistic lens. And I just think there's so much good that can be done from these tools. I've provided other examples of products that I'm just toying with. If I know I've got a relatively sophisticated client who's dealing with something, I know the expert. So Beau Atkins is a famous expert on narcissistic behavior, high conflict family law situations. You've got people like Robert Cialdini, who's an expert in persuasion and psychology on that side. And so I can design a prompt saying, review, basically ask a client, copy and paste this prompt where you're channeling the experts in this field and running through your situation. So they're not just getting an AI that's going to tell them, you know what, you're so right, and how dare that person do this thing, but actually get them to look inward and consider how they might approach things differently in the future. I hope clients don't lean too heavily on that and say, well, I've just got this. I'll never have to communicate with the other side because I've got AI. I hope that's not the case, because I think parents ultimately eventually need to communicate for the betterment of their kids. But I think it's a lot better than parents who communicate abhorrently. I mean, some of the things we see as family lawyers, it's horrible. And
Yeah.
I don't say that critically because I've also been through a divorce. And so I know as you're going through that, you are the worst version of yourself.
Yeah.
A few years ago, I went through mine about 15 years ago. I went through my own affidavits and I was like, I literally cried. I was like, I
was a
can't believe
jerk.
what a shitty person I was. Oh, it was horrible. And that's me having I didn't know as much as I knew back then, but I knew something. I knew some of the things I was doing weren't appropriate. Thankfully, my son was young and I snapped out of that early. And his mom and I have an amazing co-parenting arrangement because of that. But I know not all people get that lucky. And so my hope is that I can provide the tools that at least assist them to getting there.
Yeah, and in my last question, I mean, I want to pivot to that because when we talk about productized services, what people usually talk about is we're going to do a flat fee and it's going to include X, Y, and Z, and usually the price of the flat fee is some relationship of how many hours did it take me to do that list of things I said was going to be included, and so it's always some iteration of hourly billing masquerading as productized services, but I'm trying to imagine myself, and I'm going to ask you to imagine yourself starting over. You're starting a new firm. You don't have any of the resources that you have now. You don't have the people. You don't have the institutional knowledge. You don't have all that. But you have the ability to walk in and say, I'm going to try to serve these people here through this particular problem, and I have these tools at my disposal. If you were to start over and redesign what it is that you sell, how would you rethink that now, and do these tools affect what you think is possible in that legal supply chain, in the delivery of that service?
Yeah, I don't know that I would do anything different. For 5 years, we've been doing exclusively flat fee. We don't charge for time for any of our services. In some instances, we've been burned, but we generally make up for that. And so we spent hours, thousands of hours dedicated to product design and structure breaking it in. I think we've got, it was to the point where I called them products as if they had SKU numbers. And I even gave them SKU numbers to envision this person needs a petition for divorce. Take it off the shelf. What does that look like? This is how it starts. These are the billing milestones. This is when it's done. We need to have a communication with the client saying, we're done this. This is what I recommend next. This is the product. This is the cost, and go from there. So a lot of intentionality went into designing those products already. And we've also been highly iterative throughout the process. They've just gotten better. And it was a really interesting time to start a business. May 2020, COVID, basically, we had no idea how bad it was going to be. We're sort of isolated here in Saskatchewan, Canada, too, where we barely even had lockdowns. So we didn't really appreciate what it was going to look like in a month or 6 months or a year. But there were so many really exciting opportunities that as an entrepreneur, I took advantage of. I saw the profession frantically scrambling around saying, oh, we've got to spend all of this time and effort figuring out vaccine applications, court applications where a parent doesn't want to get a kid vaccinated. I thought, I'm not going to become an expert in this because, quite frankly, I think that's today's concern. The bigger concern is, how do we take this unique opportunity we have to play? You could screw up during COVID. Everyone was doing phone appearances, video appearances, things like that. And we did screw up, but we learned from it. I remember one judge tried calling for a chambers application, got connected with our virtual assistant somewhere in, I can only imagine, Louisiana, thick Southern drawl. And this person would not put that judge through until they gave their first name and phone number to be called back. And this was on the line with the other party was a self-rep pro se litigant. When the judge was finally put through to me, I was admonished. He took a strip off of me, and a lot of it I recognized was optics. You had a self-rep on the other side. This was embarrassing. I was embarrassed. Yeah. My face was red. The judge, who thankfully I had a good rapport with, called me afterwards and said, Atkins, I know this doesn't meet your standard. This is what I experienced before you were on the line. Fix it. And we fixed it. And I had cake on my face for a while. It took a little while to get over that. But then once the courts opened up and I saw all the other lawyers making the same mistake or worse than I did, and you knew they weren't doing anything to learn from that or improve, it sort of that was sort of my vindication, where I'm like, okay, we're doing okay. We tried some things, dropped some balls, but we'll pick them up, and we still have our eye on the prize of making life better for these people.
Yeah, and I think if I can summarize, and you tell me if this is an accurate summary, if I were to summarize how you are practicing AI right now, if you take those buckets of lawyering, which is what you know and how you serve and how you think, you're currently relying on AI mostly for what you know, but in a careful way, right? Like you're giving people ways to interact with information, but you're being careful about it. You're not currently relying on it to make people feel warm and fuzzy. You're not currently relying on it to strategize cases or whatever, or use the way you think. Is that a fair summary of the way you're practicing AI right now?
Yeah. No, I don't think it's at that point where I'd have that confidence with it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's super helpful. Well, Beau, I appreciate you. Your context, both being in family law, being in Canada, being somebody who is entrepreneurial and practices in that way and designs these sort of products, these supply chains, as I call them, it is really helpful for people who want to learn more about you and your practice and maybe just want to hang out with you next time you and I are hanging out. What's the best way to reach out to you?
LinkedIn is always best. I'm most active on there. I've taken a bit of a summer hiatus, but I generally post fairly frequently on there. I'm usually at the big tech shows, likely be in Chicago next year as well.
Great. Yeah, come here and hang out with us. We'll take you for some pizza. Well, I appreciate you, Beau. For everyone listening, this has been Practicing AI. It's an effort from Spellbook to learn how lawyers are actually practicing with actual AI in their practices. We're going to continue these conversations into the future. If you want to be a guest to tell us how you're using AI in your practice, please reach out to me. We'll make sure to have Beau's information in the show notes and mine as well. We will see you all in the next episode. Thanks again, Beau.
Thank you.